In the 12th century, the English village of Woolpit was as ordinary as it got small, rural. Tucked into the countryside of Suffolk, it was a quiet place where life revolved around farming, church bells, and the changing seasons. But then something arrived that no one could explain. One afternoon, according to written accounts from the time, villagers found 2 children, a boy and a girl, wandering near the edge of a deep wolf pit, from which the town got its name. They were young, frightened, and dressed in odd clothing made of unfamiliar materials. They spoke no known language, and most remarkably, their skin was green. Yes, green. The villagers were stunned. The children were taken in by a local landowner, Sir Richard D. Callan, who fed them, clothed them, and tried to make sense of who or what they were. The children refused to eat normal food. For days, they only consumed raw beans until slowly they adapted. Over time, their skin began to lose its greenish hue. But the mystery only deepened. The boy grew weak and eventually died. The girl survived, learned to speak English, and then told the story that shocked everyone. She said she and her brother came from a land called St. Martin's Land, a place where the sun never rose and everything was bathed in perpetual twilight. She said they had been herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise and suddenly found themselves near the pit. Was it a fairy tale, a hallucination, or something much stranger? They say history repeats itself, but what about the parts we forgot? Welcome to Echoes of History, the channel where we dig up the dusty corners of the past to uncover the weird, the wild, and the wait, what? Stories they didn't teach you in school. Grab your curiosity and maybe a cup of tea, because what you're about to hear might just change how you see the world. In a time when myths and miracles mingled with daily life, stories like the Green Children of Woolpit didn't stay local for long. The tale found its way into the hands and quills of 2 of the era's most respected chroniclers, William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall. These weren't village gossips. They were learned men, monks, historians, and they each recorded the story in writing, though with notable differences. Let's start with William of Newburgh. Writing in the 1190s, William was skeptical by nature. He often criticized other historians for exaggerating or spreading superstition, yet even he was intrigued by the tale from Woolpit. He wrote that 2 children, green in color, appeared near a wolf pit during the reign of King Stephen, that's between 1135 and 1154. They were confused, dressed in strange clothes, and spoke an unknown tongue. William admits the story was incredible, but says he included it because it was widely reported and believed by reliable people, particularly the noblemen who raised them. Then there's Ralph of Coggeshall, writing a few decades later. Ralph was the abbot of a monastery not far from Woolpit, giving him closer proximity to the event. He also claimed to have heard the story directly from the family that took the children in. According to Ralph, the Green Children were brother and sister, found near a trench. They refused all food but beans, and only the girl survived. He adds more detail to her story. She said her people lived underground, in a land of perpetual twilight, and that everything there had a greenish hue, like theirs. But here's where it gets messy. The accounts disagree on key details. One says they came during King Stephen's reign, the other during King Henry II's. One implies the children were speaking gibberish. The other suggests they used an unknown but structured language. And while William's version is more cautious, Ralph's includes elements that border on the otherworldly. So what are we to make of this? Are these just different interpretations of the same strange event? Or has the story been filtered through legend, bias, or medieval imagination? Even more fascinating, both chroniclers believed the story was important enough to preserve not as fantasy, but as history. They didn't treat it like folklore. They placed it alongside wars, royal births, and plagues. To them, the Green Children were a mystery, but a real one. This forces us to ask, why did respected chroniclers include a story so bizarre in serious historical works? And more importantly, what did medieval people think was actually going on? To understand how people in 12th century England processed the story of the Green Children, we have to step into a very different worldview. This was an age where the natural and the supernatural were deeply entwined. Church bells rang out to warn of storms. Illnesses were blamed on sin or spirits, and the landscape itself, woods, rivers, pits, was often seen as a gateway to the otherworld. So, when the green-skinned, strangely dressed children appeared speaking an unknown language, people didn't immediately think of malnutrition or rare diseases. They thought fairies, the fair folk, and hidden realms in medieval England. Belief in fairies and hidden races wasn't just bedtime storytelling, it was a legitimate explanation for the unexplained. The idea of a parallel world just beneath our own was deeply rooted in folklore. These realms, sometimes called fairy lands, elf kingdoms, or the underworld, were thought to be places of strange rules, perpetual twilight, and beings who sometimes crossed over into our world. Sound familiar? The girl's description of St. Martin's Land, a sunless realm with green light, perfectly matches descriptions from Celtic and Anglo-Saxon folklore. Some believed that time moved differently there. Others said the people were smaller, with different skin or eye colors, and many tales Humans stumbled into these worlds through caves, pits, or dense forests, only to return changed or not at all. So, when the Woolpit children appeared near a wolf trap pit, it fit right into this mental map. To the medieval mind, they might not have been aliens, but interlopers from the hidden world. Theological interpretations, but folklore wasn't the only lens. Many educated thinkers of the time, especially churchmen, also saw the world through a theological framework. Some interpreted the Green Children as signs from God, perhaps a warning, a test, or a parable made real. Others speculated they were purgatorial beings, souls caught between worlds, sent to Earth for redemption. In fact, one later version of the story hints that the children might have been from a land between heaven and hell. Their arrival was a spiritual allegory. Still others saw demonic influence. Were they possessed? Sent to confuse the faithful? Tainted by sin? The truth is, no one knew, but they felt compelled to assign meaning. Because in the medieval world, nothing happened without purpose, especially not something this strange. Science? Not quite yet. Modern readers might ask, what about rational explanations? Surely someone considered disease, or language barriers, or regional isolation. The answer is, not really. While there were certainly physicians and scholars in the 12th century, the concept of science as we know it today was in its infancy. Most people didn't think in terms of biology or psychology. They thought in mystical causality. And so, when the Green Children appeared out of nowhere, the leading explanations were not, they're malnourished, but rather, they're not from here. A story that fit the time in the end. The Green Children's story survived not because it made sense, but because it fit. It fit into the fears, beliefs, and curiosities of the age. It gave shape to the unknown and let people project their own interpretations, be they mystical, religious, or folkloric. And maybe that's why the tale still resonates today, because we, too, are drawn to stories that live in the gray space between explanation and wonder. Centuries after the Green Children of Woolpit allegedly wandered into the English countryside, modern minds began asking a different question. What if this wasn't magic, or theology, or visitors from another realm? What if it was just misunderstood reality? With the rise of science and historical analysis in the 19th and 20th centuries, scholars, doctors, and folklorists began to dig into the case not with incense or rosaries, but with critical thinking, and what they found was intriguing, but not exactly conclusive. Let's break down the most cited rational theories. Theory 1, chlorosis or hypochromic anemia. This is perhaps the most quoted medical explanation. Some researchers believe the children may have suffered from a type of anemia, now often called hypochromic anemia, which can cause the skin to take on a greenish or pale yellow hue due to lack of iron in the blood. Back in the day, it was sometimes called chlorosis, literally the green sickness. This theory proposes that the children were malnourished, possibly orphans from a nearby famine-struck area who had been eating an extremely poor diet, devoid of iron, once taken in and fed better. Especially with beans, their skin color gradually normalized. That matches the historical record. But critics of this theory point out, chlorosis doesn't make people emerald green. At most, it gives a sickly pallor, not alien-like skin. It's also rare in children as young as the ones described. And even if malnourishment explains their health, it doesn't explain the language, the story, or the sudden appearance. So while it may play a part, chlorosis can't cover everything. Theory 2, arsenic poisoning or toxic food. Another theory floats the idea of arsenic exposure either through contaminated water or toxic food, such as fava beans. Some medical historians suggest the children may have suffered from favism, a condition in which certain people, especially of Mediterranean descent, have a genetic sensitivity to fava beans, leading to hemolytic anemia. This can cause jaundice, fatigue, and sometimes a yellow-green tint to the skin. Here again, the diet plays a role. The children refused other food but ate raw beans, perhaps indicating both craving and risk. But again, this theory stretches the limits. The children didn't seem ill enough to be poisoned. No other symptoms were noted like rashes, vomiting, or delirium. And why would both children, likely siblings, share such a rare condition? Interesting, yes. Conclusive, not quite. Theory 3, Flemish refugees. Now we're entering the socio-historical realm. One of the more convincing non-medical theories is that the Green Children were Flemish orphans, displaced during one of the many violent upheavals in England during the 12th century. Specifically, some point to the Battle of Fornham in 1173, where many Flemish immigrants brought to England as mercenaries were massacred. Their families, scattered or killed, may have left children wandering the countryside. If those children were from a Flemish-speaking community, their language would have sounded utterly foreign to rural English villagers. Their unusual clothes, just foreign fashion. Their greenish skin, perhaps a mix of malnutrition and cultural difference. Even St. Martin's Land could be a misunderstanding, a garbled memory of a church or place name. So far, so good. But again, how did the children survive alone in the wild long enough to reach Woolpit? And how do they appear near a deep wolf pit, seemingly without warning? The refugee theory offers context but not a complete map. Theory 4. It never happened, at least not like that finally. Some historians suggest that the story of the Green Children is just that, a story. They argue that the tale was heavily embellished, or even invented, by medieval chroniclers who wanted to write something memorable. Maybe the foreign children did appear, but their clothes weren't strange, their skin wasn't green, and their language wasn't incomprehensible. Maybe the green detail came later, as a metaphor for sickness, foreignness, or spiritual mystery. Remember, medieval chroniclers weren't bound by modern journalistic standards. They wrote to inspire, teach, or warn, not necessarily to report facts. So it's entirely possible that a small, real incident became a large, mythic tale, shaped by the pens and imaginations of monks. But here's the thing, if it was a legend, why did the independent chroniclers write about it with such specificity? Why did they treat it like genuine history, not parable? The absence of clear intent to mythologize has led many to believe that something real did happen, even if it got distorted in the telling. A case of partial answers ultimately. No rational theory covers every part of the story. The green skin, the strange language, the sudden appearance, the detailed narrative of St. Martin's Land, the death of one child and the adaptation of the other. They each explain one angle, but none answer at all. That's what makes the case so maddening and so fascinating. It might sound like science fiction or even satire, but among all the theories about the Green Children of Woolpit, one has grown louder in recent decades, amplified by UFO researchers, speculative historians, and pop culture's ever-growing hunger for the strange. What if these two children weren't from another country, or a hidden fairy realm, or victims of disease? What if they were from another planet, or at least another dimension? It's an idea that seems outrageous at first glance, but the deeper you go, the more it starts to echo familiar patterns in modern UFO lore. Let's take a closer look at how and why this theory developed. The alien angle emerges. The alien hypothesis didn't seriously appear until the late 20th century, when writers like Duncan Lunan and Brinsley Lepore Trench, both involved in fringe science and extraterrestrial speculation, suggested that the Green Children might represent a medieval alien encounter. According to them, the children weren't from St. Martin's Land as we understand it. That was simply the closest description a 12th century child could give for something utterly alien: a dying planet, a sunless moon, or an artificial habitat like a generation ship, or underground colony. In this view, the land of twilight wasn't mystical, it was literal. A world without sunlight, a failing biosphere, a place with greenish light from artificial sources. The children's clothing, not strange fashion, but possibly a pressure suit or synthetic material foreign to Earth. Their language, unrecognizable because it wasn't terrestrial. Their diet, a sign of biological incompatibility, only able to digest simple, organic Earth beings at first. And their sudden arrival, a transportation error, a malfunction, or even an intentional drop-off. It reads like sci-fi, but the parallels with modern alien abduction accounts are surprisingly tight. The teleportation theory, some theorists expand on this by suggesting the Green Children were accidentally teleported, whether by advanced alien tech or some kind of wormhole between realities. The description of the children hearing a loud noise and then suddenly finding themselves in Woolpit has been interpreted by these researchers as a dimensional shift, a term commonly used in modern UFO lore. Was it a beam, a rift, an experiment gone wrong again? We have no physical evidence, but the narrative structure mirrors that of missing time cases in modern alien encounter reports. Survivors of a dying world, there's also a tragic angle. Some proponents suggest the children were the last survivors of a declining alien outpost, possibly one located within the Earth, beneath the sea, or even on a nearby celestial body, like the Moon or Mars. In this theory, the Green Children were either evacuated to Earth intentionally as a last resort, or abandoned by accident through a failing transport system. Their physical weakness, unfamiliarity with surroundings, and eventual death of the boy support the idea that they were biologically incompatible with Earth's environment. The girl's adaptation could represent either a partial hybrid physiology or the resilience of a life form trying to survive in hostile conditions. To some, this is not myth, it's evidence. But where's the proof? Let's be clear, there's no hard evidence supporting the alien hypothesis, no artifacts, no remains, no interstellar breadcrumbs. The theory is built entirely on interpretation using modern alien lore to retrofit a 900-year-old story. And yet, that's also the point. UFO researchers argue that stories like this have always existed. They just didn't have the language to describe them. What we call aliens, medieval people called fairies, angels, or demons. What we call spaceships, they described as bright chariots, floating orbs, or celestial visitations. In this view, the Green Children aren't unique. They're just the oldest recorded case. Folklore meets phenomenon, whether you believe the alien theory or not. It raises an important idea, that folklore and unexplained phenomena often walk hand in hand. That myth may preserve distorted memories of something real, even if we can't identify it, and that the line between the supernatural and the extraterrestrial might not be as clear as we think. So, were the Green Children of Woolpit early alien visitors? It's unlikely. But then again, if something strange were to happen in 12th century England, who would have the words to describe it? It's easy to dismiss the story of the Green Children as a quirky footnote in a dusty chronicle, an oddity from a superstitious time. But somehow, over 8 centuries later, we're still talking about it. Why? Because buried beneath the mystery is something deeply human, the need for meaning. Every culture, in every era, has encountered things it can't explain: events, people, lights in the sky, strange words and strange mouths. When those moments arrive, we do what humans always do. We tell stories. We don't do it to lie. We do it to survive confusion, to create structure out of chaos, to remind ourselves that even the inexplicable can be woven into a narrative. The tale of the Green Children is just one version of that impulse, one that happened to survive the passage of time. But it's not just a legend, it's a mirror. A story that adapts. The brilliance of the Green Children tale is how it adapts to whoever finds it. To medieval minds, it was a warning, a miracle, or a glimpse of God's mysterious order. To folklorists, it became an echo of fairy realms and hidden lands. To scientists, it posed a challenge: find the earthly cause. To UFO theorists, it became a forgotten alien encounter. And to modern readers, it feels like a symbol of the unknown, the green tinge of everything we still don't understand. No single explanation wins, because the story doesn't want to be solved. It wants to live, and that's what it's done for 800 years. The power of the unresolved. In an age of endless answers, there's something oddly comforting about a mystery that refuses to close. The Green Children are not a lesson. They're not a warning. There are questions still hanging in the air. And perhaps that's why they endure. Because we live in a world that moves fast, explains everything, and fears the unexplained. But Woolpit reminds us, sometimes the unknown is where the most enduring stories are born. And sometimes the best thing we can do is listen, wonder, and not know. That's it for today's Forgotten Tale. If this story made you raise an eyebrow, or don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that dusty little bell so you never miss another echo from the past. Drop it in the comments. We're always listening for new echoes. Got a weird bit of history you think we should cover? Until next time, keep your curiosity loud and your history weird. That's it.